Good day, everyone. Sound Espressivo is a new generation of classical music competition which offers contestants to perform in live broadcasts, television style, from their own locations everywhere in the world. Sound Espressivo panel of judges represents top performing artists and music educators from around the globe. Sound Espressivo offers an unprecedented array of awards for musicians. Welcome to our podcast, Meet the Judges, Music Promoters and Managers, and Music Educators.
No matter where you are or who you are, music connects us all. We started with a dream, but now we are paving the future. Welcome to the Sound Espressivo Global Competition. Fully virtual, yet bringing musicians closer together than ever before, now on a global scale. True live, inclusivity, diversity, connection, community. An extraordinary array of judges. Get noticed by companies all over the world. Prizes, scholarships, performance opportunities. Apply to be a part of the most exciting congregation of artists like nothing you've ever seen before. We guarantee quality and leave no musician behind. We can't wait to hear you on the virtual stage.
Today we have a guest on our program, a creator of one of the courses for iClassical Academy. iClassical Academy offers an online, fully rounded educational curriculum, which is a tremendous source of vetted and proven knowledge. The courses are both academic and practical for musicians who are professionals, as well as for students, amateurs, and music lovers. The courses are also built in close collaboration with some of the most respected and leading professionals in the field. Recently, the company opened their collection of courses as a whole curriculum where people can access all of what they accumulated over the years, pretty much like what a conservatory or a university would offer to their students. iClassical Academy is a big supporter of the Sound Espressivo competition, and the company is sponsoring prizes for winning contestants. Their prizes are designed to help musicians be better equipped with modern tools and knowledge for progressing towards their goals as music students and professional musicians. Our today's discussion is focused on a part of the curriculum which is dedicated to audio engineering and music production. We welcome Anthony Schultz, sound engineer and music producer, to join today from his studio in Boston and to participate in this discussion. Anthony, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you and to have you bring your very profound knowledge of the field. Musicians need to know what you know. I wanted to introduce you also with a statement line, which is on your profile on iClassical website. I found your words profoundly inspirational, especially today, and I hope you don't mind I share them.
Sure.
I'm going to read this because I don't want to mess up what you stated so well. My desire. I'm grateful that I can do what I love to do for a living, and to share my knowledge and experience with others. I believe that learning is a lifelong process, and I model this to students by sharing my own thoughts and research gained through my own learning process. Music production and audio engineering encompasses both art and science. I endeavor to realign students' thinking to focus on the scientific aspect of this field so that they may be able to use their scientific knowledge and apply it in a creative way. I really love that because science and technology these are phenomenal tools and they can be used for creative process. I agree with you completely.
Definitely.
Producers, sound engineers are still perceived by some musicians as mere technicians. And musicians still, in some ways, consider music production as a subservient field, too convoluted, too technical, maybe even uncreative or unartistic. You created the course for people who may also have a hard time making friends with technology. Please explain why you think professional musicians should learn the audio engineering aspect of the music.
Well, the first thing is, when I, just in my early days of recording with very limited, like cassette recorders and very basic tools, I found myself, once I recorded myself, it didn't sound good, but I was able to hear myself as a musician. So when I got into audio recording, in the college level, I was recording myself more, and I found myself getting to be a better musician because I was able to kind of get the feedback of how I was playing, and had more challenges, like play this 16 measure solo, phrase it correctly, the whole phrasing, and you had to learn how to do that, and you heard yourself, and I found that to be, I didn't understand that until years later, how beneficial that was. But as a musician, it helped me to be such a better guitar player because you're doing something, or a vocalist, or whatever you're doing. And so that alone is the first thing. And the other thing is, you just need to be able to record yourself for, sending tracks to people, or recording yourself for auditions, or at any level, high school, college, professional. A nice little setup, recorded properly, could be used in a commercial studio for, instead of having you go there, especially nowadays, and still be able to make revenue off of your skills.
Yeah, that's incredibly practical. Of course, we do live in the world where so much is recorded content and video, audio content. So resisting that is almost like resisting our own future. I agree with that.
Yeah.
You created a very comprehensive course, which is part of the iClassical curriculum. We would like to get a little peek into what's in that course. And if we play a few samples of the segments of the course, would you comment?
Sure. The first, if you play video one, that basically is just a little bit of an overview of the basic setup. How the course kind of begins, so you can play a little bit of that if you will. Our setup will consist of a computer with software application for recording, an audio interface, speakers, headphones, and 2 microphones. Before we talk about the equipment, let's start by reviewing the common types of audio and computer connections that you should be familiar with. 1/4-inch TS, used for instruments such as guitar, bass, and keyboards. 1/4-inch TRS, used for connecting headphones to your audio interface output for monitoring. RCA, used for consumer audio components such as home stereo systems. XLR, used for connecting microphones to your audio interface or mixer. XLR cables have a male and female end. The mic is connected to the female end, and the male end plugs into the audio interface input or mixer. A combi connector can accept either an XLR connector for mics or 1/4-inch connector for the line-level instruments such as guitars and keyboards. This connector is commonly used for inputs on many audio interfaces. Depending on your computer and interface, you may be using a USB Type-A, Thunderbolt, or USB Type-C connector for functionality between devices. Unlike audio cables, which only allow for signal to flow in one direction, computer connections allow for signal to flow in both directions. Whether you are using a Mac or a PC, the computer will serve as your recording device and heart of the entire system. You'll need to use a software application for recording, editing, and mixing. These types of applications are referred to as digital audio workstations, or DAWs for short. For this course, we will be using Audacity, a free application that offers all the features needed to record, edit, and mix your own performances. It also includes signal processors such as EQ, compression, and reverb. There are many other applications available which offer additional features that you can use once you've gotten familiar with the basic techniques.
Incredible. This is so concise. And the DAWs, I've seen this a zillion times, and I always wondered what it means, never had an explanation, comprehensive explanation. Getting back to basics and being it laid out in such a comprehensive, structural, informative form gives people like me, professional musicians, hope that I can handle it.
Right. No, it's presented really. I mean, it was tough for me to do that. Believe me, it was like, okay, I had to always keep in mind who I was writing for, you know. And being in the business for 30 years, you just kind of you just have to kind of okay, where do I start? And it's like 100 minutes of information, and I had to write from scratch, so it was very difficult to kind of stay in that same line of beginner, just I have to explain what everything means.
Yes.
Sometimes I said, do I really need to include that? And then I realized that, yep, you have to talk about every little thing. So it led to a lot of really good information and helped me to reevaluate as an educator teaching students this technology, little things that I thought maybe I'm not doing that as thorough as I should. So it was good for me just as an educator to kind of just reassess some of the topics and how I present it to someone.
But I agree completely, because those little parts of very basic knowledge, they're building blocks.
Right.
And when we have a good foundation with all of them comprehensively explained to us, we can move forward rather quickly. But without that, I keep finding myself always going back and trying to figure out I'm missing some fundamental block on which so much is built already, and I can't understand any of it because I'm missing the beginning of it.
Right. Well, I mean, even just the connectors part. I mean, to me, that was very kind of fundamental. But I was like, you have to, like, connectors are how you connect things, right? You have to know there's things that you have to connect, and then in upper levels of things, I talk more about different stages of gain staging and whatever. But the connector is just like, okay, how do I plug this in? And you have to kind of know what they're called or what they do. And
exactly,
that's
because
the starting point, connect the pieces of gear,
Yeah, and even when you're searching for pieces of gear on Amazon, you need to know that one of them is the signal going one directionally, but the other one is going both directionally, and you don't want to use one for the purpose of the other.
Yep.
Things like that are extremely helpful. And if we can maybe move on to the next one,
sure,
to get a sample of the
so
next
this one
topic.
you can probably just play for a short time. I think it's a whole song of a woman that played throughout the course. There's a bunch of audio examples of miking. So this is just this is the full video of her doing it, which I include as supplemental material in the course. So the course has like examples, but there's actually supplemental materials of the woman playing the entire take of this space pair or this XY pattern. So there's a lot of supplemental stuff on there so this is one of those supplemental files, but you can just play a little bit of it to get it.
We'll just get a sample of it.
Yep,
sure.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic to hear how it can be done playing in your earphones like right away so you can notice what different things can be done.
Yeah, when you listen with the headphones, I mean, I don't think I was hearing it in stereo from here, but one thing I point out in the chorus with that pattern we were seeing is that she was moving around. And so I talk about the fact that when you're listening to it in stereo, you can actually hear her moving, which may not always be a good thing. So sometimes you want a little bit of kind of, like as far as depending on the role that instrument's playing. As a soloist like that, it might be a little distracting that it pulls to one side. Whereas if there was an accompaniment behind it, it might be good because that way there's a little bit of movement. So just, I wasn't expecting for that, but when I heard it, because I could tell that she's moving, and then the other pattern is more central and you don't hear the movement, and the other pattern actually has a wider stereo field and things like that. So there's comparisons I do just to describe what to expect, and I also refer to what it would sound, techniques that might be better for small room miking versus a room like mine, because that was in my studio. So
That's very interesting, and I can see how that reflects your focus on giving people tools to use the science for the creative process. Because some artists may decide they really want the sound to travel from one ear to another, so now they know how to do that. But while the other artists may be adamantly against that, so they have a tool for expressing them their own way. This is very.
It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's like
it's a thing.
It's like, okay, do we want this or not? And we make choices based on if we know that that's going to be the potential outcome, we know how to set up a mic in order to do even though there's things that you can't expect, eventually you start narrowing down. You can categorize things, so I know where to start as an engineer. And that's
absolutely.
That's
yeah, and it gives musicians a knowledge of how to develop their own maybe audio video persona.
Totally.
By using tools properly to what the artistic goal they want to achieve. Wonderful. We're ready, I think, to move to the next segment.
Okay, so I think video 3 is just a little bit more about mic placement.
Stereo recording uses two independent channels being recorded simultaneously to capture sound. Each microphone is positioned to pick up the optimal sound of the instrument from two different angles. Placing a mic closer to the sound source will minimize the amount of room sound being picked up by the microphone compared to the direct sound from the instrument. We will be covering room acoustics in greater detail in another lesson of this course. Proximity effect is a low-frequency boost that happens when mics are placed close to a sound source. If low-end boost is not desired, you can either pull the mic back slightly or use a low-cut switch if available to flatten the response. The following examples are best heard when using headphones. The most common stereo mic configuration is the XY pattern, also known as the coincident pair. It uses two mics that are placed next to or above each other at a 90-degree angle facing the left and right sides of the stereo field. The XY configuration typically gives a good stereo image and easy to use in any size recording environment. Using a stereo microphone bar makes it a bit easier for positioning and only requires one mic stand instead of two. The space pair uses two mics that are placed near the outside borders of the stereo field and pointed towards the sound source. The space pair typically gives a wider stereo image since the mics are further apart and tend to capture a bit more room tone. Using a spaced pair in a smaller environment such as this example may give you stereo imaging issues if the sound source is not stationary. In this example, the body movements of the musician are causing the sound to shift from left to right. This is probably not desirable for a solo performance. You can also capture sound with a single mic placed in front of or above the instrument being recorded.
That is really stunning. As a musician, myself, professional pianist, I'm so keenly attuned to variation of the tone and color and fullness or dryness and all of this. And each one of those positions, I understand, was not edited after the recording was done. It's a raw file, right?
Yep.
That's what I thought when I heard it.
And that's not a mix. That's just what it sounded like as I recorded it. And then later in the course, I take that same material. We do a section about editing. So I actually take two takes of the same. I'd use the same miking, two takes of the same miking technique, which was XY, which is my favorite, by the way. The XY pattern, I prefer that. I use that on my guitar amp. I use it on an instrument like that. I do that a lot more. It's a very wide field over 2 tracks, and then you can work with it as you want. And so I go over, editing, and then eventually in the last segment, I think there might be one of the videos about the mixing part. I take what we did and I kind of process it with EQ and compression and whatnot.
That is very interesting to hear the difference, which is already given to the recording from the get-go, from the very beginning, depending on the positioning of the microphone. And those positions are so simple to execute once you know what they're supposed to be.
That's very simple, exactly. And the other thing that I talk about that's important is and it's really important to get correctly as a new engineer is recording levels. So there's an area I talk about how to read a meter so you know the level is good, and what's the variation that's like the sweet spot. And that's really, when I get recordings from new engineers, it's typically, they might have good equipment, but the recording level could screw up. They record too hot or they record too low. And then when you bring it up, you have all this noise behind it because they recorded it with a cheaper mic or an environment that's not, so there's definitely some, variation to that. So that's
some pitfalls to avoid and learn some skill,
Exactly.
of course. We need to be prepared for that. Would you comment a little bit about the next segment?
The next one, I believe, is about the recording environment.
Professional recording studios are purpose-built facilities constructed with specific goals and objectives in mind and designed by professionals with many years of experience in the field. Many of these facilities offer spacious recording rooms that are equipped with large format consoles and a wide variety of microphones and outboard gear. The biggest challenge of studio construction is to create an isolated space that keeps sound from being heard outside of the control room and recording room, and to keep outside noise from being picked up by the microphones during recording. Standard wall construction consists of a 2x4 wooden or metal stud framework with one layer of gypsum board, also called sheetrock, on each side. This is the common method for creating separate rooms in a house or offices within a commercial space. However, it is barely sufficient for privacy during normal conversations and completely inadequate to contain the sound of a musician practicing an instrument, let alone an entire band playing at once. To improve the isolation of a recording studio, a type of design called split construction is used. This room-within-a-room type of construction consists of 2 sets of frameworks, decoupled by a few inches from each other, with multiple layers of sheetrock on both sides. Once the walls are in place, A new floating floor would be constructed on top of the existing floor, separated by absorbers to minimize vibrations through the floor and to isolate the floor vibrations from being transferred to the walls. The cost associated with building this kind of isolated space is astronomical. Not all spaces are well suited for this type of heavy construction, and unless you own the property, the structural modifications are not likely to be approved by the landlord. Reflection is when sound bounces off a surface. Collectively referred to as ambience, these reflections define the spatial characteristics of the room and have a major impact on the overall sound of the recording. Spaces with a lot of hard, flat surfaces are generally not ideal for recording since they create too many reflections and can diminish the clarity of the musical performance. As mentioned in an earlier lesson on mic placement, moving the mic closer to the sound source will minimize the impact of the ambience picked up by the mic. Many centuries before there were recording studios, the sound of large spaces used for music, such as concert halls and churches, relied on the reflections within the space to enhance what was being heard by the listeners. Absorption is when sound is kept from bouncing off a surface due to the material makeup of the surfaces. Bedrooms and living rooms tend to have less reflective properties since they have an increased number of softer surfaces such as carpet, drapes, large couches, mattresses, and bedding. Walk-in closets usually make good vocal booths since the clothing absorbs the sound very well. These materials make a big difference in altering the reflective properties of a room, drastically decreasing the amount of reflections that occur, and allows microphones to pick up more direct sound from the instrument. For recordings made under controlled conditions in a dry environment, ambience can be added electronically to the signal during mixdown to give more depth of field to a recording. This additional ambience is referred to as reverb. We will cover the use of reverb in the lesson on mixing.
That's so clear in such a simple terms. I don't know how you can make it any more clear and understandable. Next time.
I'm glad you, because that was the point, so I'm glad I've achieved that goal.
Oh,
Nice.
absolutely, you
Appreciate
did.
it.
And again, it gives clear choices. If I want natural ambience, then I recorded myself in a church because that's what it's built for. And if I want to add it later and have a control over how much or how little I have and how it
Yeah, exactly.
sounds, then I go in a closet. Again, you're giving choices to people which are so clear to understand so that we can use them for our artistic performance and recording goals. Incredible. Do we have more
I think we do.
segments to show?
If you want to just play a short bit of the next one, it's about noise reduction because I have something I can say about that, and then we'll have one just showing about the mixing process, so we can play a small portion of that as well. So you can just.
The noise reduction plugin is ideal for reducing constant background noise such as fans, tape noise, or hums. It will not work very well for removing talking or music in the background. In this example, we have a performance of a violin with a lot of noise in the track. Let's zoom in and play the track from the beginning. This whole recording has that same amount of noise throughout, and it is very noticeable and distracting. To get rid of it, start by selecting an area that has only the noise. Under the Effects menu, select Noise Reduction. Click on the Get Noise Profile button. Once the noise profile has been captured, select the entire area to be processed. Go back to the Noise Reduction plugin. The plugin has retained the previous noise profile and will reduce based on the parameter settings. Click on Preview to audition the noise reduction settings. Once you are happy with the settings, click OK to apply the changes.
That's phenomenal. Please give us comments.
And that's a free application. Like anyone can do that. And I'll tell you the story about that is I used that particular thing we just saw on all of my dialogue for all of the course. So I recorded it with a decent mic. Actually, I think I used the mic I'm using now, and it sounded okay, but I was able to get rid of just, the computer was on, and just that little bit of stuff that's going to happen no matter what, because you're using gear in the same room or just something, air conditioning, something, and you can apply that plugin, and it cleaned up my dialogue. And then I uploaded the cleaned up version to replace the original version, and it was amazing. So in not just music, but in dialogue, you can, do some cleaning up, and it's a great, I have the expensive noise reduction plugin type of stuff, but this is easy and it works great. So sometimes I just opt for easy and clean it up really quickly and put it back into the video program. So that's really a great thing, especially for home recording.
This is such a great thing. And yeah, it's a free application, but it has 1,000 detailed instructions and tools in it. And it's just so difficult to navigate unless we get a clear instruction like yours to point us in the direction of the most practical and most top needed tools so that we can expand from that.
Right. There is a limitation with this, however, and I'm using it a little bit in the mixing segment. That's the next clip, but the downside about Audacity, and I explain this in the lessons, is when you apply like a reverb or a compressor or an EQ to it, it's destructively processing the file. Mm-hmm. So it's not passing through virtually like most DAWs that I use have a slot, and you put a plug-in in the slot and the audio passes through, but it's not, we hear the effect, but it's not destructively altering the original file. So Audacity, you have to say, okay, I like that EQ, and then you have to print it before you move on to the next step, which might be compression. Then you have to print that, and then you have to add reverb, then you have to print that. So after printing the reverb, you might say, oh, I wish I wanted it to be a little brighter. You can't.
Yeah, but knowing that,
right? Knowing
just,
that.
First of all, you be careful and try more things before you print it,
and you
and
save at each stage.
Exactly.
So I recommend in the course, I say, okay, because of this destructive nature of what you're about to do, let's make a copy of it, and we call it blah 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 EQ or compression, or so you save stages of the project. So if one stage, you did something you don't like, you can actually retrieve it. So that's the way to get around that issue. It's just very clunky for me because I'm used to like, oh, let me change this, and then everything can be actively changed. So I talk about that comparison, and yes, it's free and we can do some good stuff, but it starts to become, in some cases, when you get a little bit more advanced with, when it's more than just two channels, you tend to want to keep those options open, for till the much later in the process, especially if you never know.
Yeah, so that you can experiment and go back and change things. But this is so good to know because, as our skills grow, maybe we'll grow out of the free application and use something more.
It does also force you to make decisions. So in my early days, I had a 4-track on cassette, and I would have to bounce tracks. So the thing about that, which is a good, it was a frustrating, like, okay, here's 3 tracks. How am I going to want them to sound when the mix is over, And you would bounce tracks because you had to erase tracks to free things up for more tracks. Mm-hmm. And I learned to make decisions, good or bad. You just go, all right, we got to commit to this. And so I find myself doing that in the studio continuously now, even though we have options and whatever. It's like, do you like that take? No, I don't like that take at all. All right, then I'm not keeping it. Don't keep stuff you don't like. Because then you have 50 takes of good stuff. So that's the downside of that is you don't have to make the decision with those kind of applications, whereas Audacity is like, do you want it or not? And so that's a good thing to kind of make decisions. And, and if you keep saving at different stages, it's not like, that much of a big deal. You back up a little bit and you continue. So that's, in the learning process, I think that's a good thing to have those options.
Yeah, absolutely. Making choices is extremely important, and keeping balance between making choices and not looking back, and keeping some of the backup and not getting clogged with 50,000 backups.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good you're talking about this, because these are very common pitfalls for anyone dealing with this.
Definitely.
Yeah, let's move on to this is our last segment.
So the last clip would be just talking about probably editing and mixing, the last stages of the project.
Before you begin, create a backup of your project. It's a good idea to also save versions at each stage along the way. Listen all the way through the track and take notes on anything that might need attention. Remember to select the entire area that you're going to process. There's two ways to do it. You can either take your selector tool and drag over the entire file, or you can just click anywhere on the audio file and press Command A to select all of the audio within the clip. I'm going to select bass and treble in the Effect menu. This gives us the ability to make bass and treble adjustments. You'll notice that the volume changes as we add and take away energy. I just want to add a little bit of low end and leave the high end alone. We can listen to how this adjustment has altered the signal. Hit Apply to process. Compression will smooth dynamics as desired. With the audio highlighted, select Compressor in Effect menu. Threshold and the ratio are the controls to focus on. The threshold will determine where we want compression to begin. The ratio will determine how much compression will be applied once the signal passes above the threshold. Since we will be normalizing, we will not be selecting the makeup gain for 0 dB after compressing. Let's listen to preview the current settings. That sounds good. Click OK to apply. You will notice how it minimized the dynamics between the peaks and the average signal. Let's go back and take a look at the signal before compression and after.
This is so useful. Oh my gosh. And we can compare the sounds between before and after.
Yeah, there's a lot of comparisons for sure.
Wonderful. This course is just such a practical tool to understand the basics and start using it right away.
Yeah, it's very useful for them.
Incredible. I want to ask you about yet another aspect of technology and music performance. And the critical aspect of music activity today is, of course, performing live through the internet and virtual platforms. The Virtual Concert Halls is a new model broadcasting company which supports live music performances and programs with cutting-edge broadcasting technology and television production systems. It is a company which was created by musicians in collaboration, of course, with professionals like yourself from the technology, audio and video engineering, and the television industry. So, Sound Espressivo is giving contestants the opportunity to dive into this yet another aspect of performance and to perform live on a virtual concert stage. We rely on the technology and the systems which were developed by virtual concert halls. But internet music streaming and broadcasting, even though it's not new, for many musicians, it is still a big question because people are questioning its value and comparing the potential of internet live streaming with the levels of quality of studio music production. What is your take on this?
Well, I mean, it could be good and bad as far as the quality of it, but I think there's room for growth in making those type of recordings sound better. I mean, the chorus is an example of ways to, improve what your room sounds like and all that. I've done a few videos this summer, based on the fact that people can play together. So they did their own recording. We tried to keep, I think that the thing that works out best with this kind of situation is that you set some ground rules on just consistency. Like, if somebody's gonna, so if somebody's gonna use an iPhone and somebody else uses a really high quality setup, it's hard to make that sound cohesive. So sometimes you might want to kind of lay out like a window of the type of recording, how you record it to, create some consistency. Those are things to think about. You always want to go for the best quality, but it also highlights the lesser quality submissions, so,
Right.
And it's hard as an engineer, believe me, I found that it was hard both, and then I'm dealing with a video that has to be somewhere on the screen as this is happening. So it's, my virtual, world was, trying to create a video with all these things. So I think it's really good to be able to do, like I said, it's a promotional outlet. If people can't go out and perform, they can do things. I did a couple of those videos over the summer, and I think they were hoping that they could get some promotional out in the summer with this video style, virtual video, and they were hoping to get gigs this fall, which I'm not sure happened, because we didn't know in the summer what was going to happen and how long, but they were able to, in any event. And I told them, because they're like, well, I don't know how many gigs we're going to get this fall, but I said, in any event, you're promoting yourself. People know you're in a band that plays this kind of music, and it's on YouTube and it's there and you can keep promoting it. It's something you're doing that you can keep promoting even though you're not playing live. So I think that if people embrace that aspect of the content capabilities, they can showcase their talents and keep momentum and do other, live. I know people do a lot of like house concerts and things, and I've been doing some things here at the studio with a few people at a time, performing, doing like just broadcasts, whether it's Facebook or whatever, and that's a thing now. And so that's how they are able to promote themselves, and it's actually more people potential than somebody going to see you at a gig. So, it doesn't sound the same. It's not the same experience, but it is an experience that may promote you better than you think. And it's a little bit less of and it's not like going to, from Boston to New York City to play 45 minutes and get paid $20, so you can be more, it's more proficient in your promoting of yourself because you're kind of at a home base. So that's the good side of it, I think, as far as, the benefit of that. Yes, it's not the same, but I think the benefits, especially for me as a studio owner, I've been very busy with things that are sent to me, and I can work on them, and I can be flexible with sessions that come in and classes. I can do things around my schedule, and I get more work done that way than trying to wait for people that are late, or some instrument has an issue, just
Exactly.
things that just eat up your time. And so I found it to be, there's definitely some benefits to this if you just kind of open your eyes and see how it's helping you, and embrace the things that are good about it, and not just be very down about embracing it. So
That's a wonderful message. And if you can just say a few words to the contestants, we are getting quite a few applications and people are starting to audition. And for many, of course, this is a big leap of faith and a courageous act because they're signing up to be broadcast live from their own location, whether it's home or studio, but it could be home for the most part. So they can use your knowledge and expertise to set up themselves best, and they can broadcast through our platform. But it is a daunting and intimidating proposition for many professional musicians, let alone students, to realize that they're going to be on a stage and in real time viewed by people all over the world. So if you can please address our contestants and their teachers.
Well, the setup that I talk about in this course, which is the very basic setup, is the same thing that I would use to broadcast to you or somewhere. So the setup that I talk about in the course is the same setup you would use if you were on a Zoom session or any kind of broadcast. So the only difference is that it's going through the internet as opposed to being recorded onto your program. So the quality will be the same, and it's really no different. So if you understand, and once you get things plugged in, you do quickly become familiar with the basics of the setup. It's not that daunting after you finally get the new gear to work. It's the same. You'll get so comfortable with it, and the quality will be much better because, and I've done some tests. My just doing meetings using the mic on the computer, I'm like, oh, it's just a meeting, and I listened to some recordings of it. I'm like, that's horrible. So I don't care what I'm doing on the computer. I'm not using my internal mic. I'm always going to use my interface with the one mic. It sounds better. There's more control, and you can position yourself, and you have more options than just the limitations of a computer mic that's picking up all the noise around you and things like that. So there's that kind of stuff. For the musicians, we'll get a better quality broadcast or recording, and then it's always a good thing to hear yourself sound good. It's just you could have played a great performance, but if the recording was horrible, it's not uplifting. So it's a really good feeling to get a good sound. You're a good performer and you cap yourself well. It's just that's going to be a great thing for you, and just moving forward with gigs or auditions or anything. So
Thank you so much, Anthony. This was incredibly helpful and gives everyone hope. Okay, I can do it too. That's how I feel.
It's not hard. If you can learn to play an instrument and get through that process, then this is, it's no different. You practice it, right? It's just, you learn about it and then you have to practice, just like an instrument. I tell my students that all the time. Just because I give you an expensive guitar doesn't mean you're going to be good at it unless you practice to get to that point. So the tools are helpful, but you just definitely want to work on the skill. That's all.
Yeah, you want to work on the skill, and all of us musicians know what it takes and what it's like.
Yep.
So
it's
that's
exactly like that. It's just a different thing. That's all.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Anthony,
Sure.
for joining us from Boston and for giving us such a hopeful perspective on what we can do going forward.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
And with that, we would like to thank our viewers, our supporters, our musicians and contestants, and of course, many, many thanks to producers and the tech support of the virtual concert halls, people behind the screen of this platform, which make it possible for all of us to be here online in real time. Thank you. See you again soon. Bye.